really start digging in, okay, I think the number one mistake that people make is they start underwriting and digging in to a creative finance deal, and doing like this deep dive underwriting before we even know if the seller is interested in creative finance. So, the goal and the idea here when you are making creative finance offers, there's a couple different ways that you can go about this. So, there are people who send out letters of intent blindly. So, you can make like a blind letter of intent offer where you are just kind of sending these letters to agents. I know there's like an LOI blaster out there. I do not use the LOI blaster. I know a lot of people that do, but they just like blast it out, right? So, like all these on market agents, they're blasting it out and they're sending out these emails. Those are blind offers, right? Because the more offers that you make, I mean, that's the goal. The more offers that you make, um, the better chances you have of getting a deal. However, when you're doing something like an LOI blaster, you're it's kind of like a big numbers game, right? So that's one of the reasons why I don't really use an LOI blaster. I think it's kind of informal, but it's still great if you've got a team member that's like watching it and you know, you know, following up and doing all that kind of stuff, then it's good. Okay, hold on. I'm just trying to pull up what I'm doing here. Okay, so that would be like a blind offer. Oops, that's not it. Um, or what you can do is what we talked about last week is going into PropStream and pulling all of the on-market listings, PropStream, Privy, DealSauce, any sort of um, database that is going to give you the best data. So I feel like all of those, PropStream, Privy, and DealSauce are going to be very similar in the type of leads that they're getting you. So, I like Deals. I don't really know how to use DealSauce, but that's a good one. But I have been using PropStream for a long time. So going into PropStream and pulling on market listings from that are have been on the market for at least 120 days inside of the zip codes that you want to call on. So if I want to call on, and I went through all this last week, but if I want to call on Duval County, I'm going to go into Duval County, and I'm going to put in my buy box, or I'm going to put in my buyer's buy box. I want it to be at least a 3-2. I want it to have at least 1,500 square feet. I mean, you can do all that and you can sort it out and filter it out. And then you go and you pull that list and you start calling those agents. Your best bet is going to be to pick up the phone and call the agents. You can send out blind offers all day long, but unless you have a team that's like answering and following up and doing it on a high level, I'm assuming that, in this group, we're starting out from scratch, right? So we're actually picking up the phone and calling agents. And you do not have to be a expert in creative finance. You don't. You just have to know someone else who's an expert in creative finance. All you have to do, and I want to tell you that most of these people that you're talking to, hello, love you. My kids just got home from school. Most of these people that you're talking to are going to be, even the agents are not going to be experts in creative finance. So, as little as you feel like you know about creative finance, they probably knew. And you can kind of think, I want you guys to think that way, even, in general. A lot of agents, they don't understand the investor side of what you do. So, as little as you feel like you know, the other person that you're talking to probably knows just as little as you. So, you don't have to be an expert. All you want to do is be able to introduce the concept to the agents. So, really good little one-liner that I will talk to about when I call an agent, as I'll, hey, Mr. Agent, how are you doing? This is not a script, so I'm just gonna, go off the cuff. I do have scripts, but hey, Mr. Agent, how you doing? I was calling about your listing on 123 Main Street. That's really easy, right? Calling about your listing, just wanted to hang on. And they might be like, yeah, what do you want to know? Okay, well, I see that it's been sitting on the market for a long time, and you want to just kind of try to get a little bit of information, like what's property. Because my introduction to creative finance goes like this. Well, I would be interested in giving your seller a full price offer if they would be willing to take payments. So I would be able to give your seller a full price offer if your seller is able to take payments. I think that, when you say full price offer, that's like a trigger, like, oh, wow, what the agents are thinking, like, oh my goodness, this person's going to give me a full price offer. Okay, what do you mean by taking payments? What I mean is that can they take, monthly payments towards their equity, or we would, pay them every single month versus just giving them a lump sum up front. Now, if they say, okay, I'd be interested in hearing more about this, that's when you can bring in the expert. So you don't have to be the expert. So, you know, I know I see Wanye on this call. So we have a deal that we're working on right now, a creative finance deal. So he brought it to me. So you guys can bring these deals to me and I can help you underwrite them. I can help you do all that. So he brought it over to me. Now I have not, we sent out a letter of intent, but I can tell you this, I haven't underwrote it hardly at all, right? So the very first thing, so he brings this deal to me, he says, okay, I have an agent that's interested, right? So he pitched the idea. He pitched the idea and gave the high level overview, right? So this is what you guys can do. You pitch the idea and give the high level overview of what creative finance looks like. So you don't even need to know, you don't even need to know like how much is on the mortgage right away, right? All you're doing is making phone calls in the beginning. You need to talk to as many people as possible. Don't dive into, well, is this sub two or is this creative finance? You want to find interest first. Once you find that interest, that's just somebody that says, yes, I'd like to hear more, whether that's an agent or a seller, then we take it to the next step. And then somebody over here says, Brittany says, when you say full price offer, is that the current listing or the price before price drops? That's just something that I say. It might not even be a full price offer. So for instance, let's just say that somebody has their property listed for 325 and it's not fully updated. And fully updated properties are selling for 290 and they've got it listed for 325 and it's not fully updated. Well, unless there's some sort of situation where maybe they have a mortgage on it for 300,000 and I can take that property for $0 and I can cash flow on it. Well, then I'm going to offer them 300,000 and maybe I'll give them like $3,000 to walk away, right? So it's going to be different for every single property and then sometimes you're going to be able to offer them full price. Um for instance, on this property that I'm working on right now, they have it listed for 335. I think that I mean completely updated this property is probably worth 290 in my opinion. And it's not fully updated. And then the mortgage payment's kind of high, so there's not a lot of cash flow. So this is when you could like when you start to dive into it, because there's a lot of different moving parts with a creative finance offer. But I'm trying to give you high level and then you dive into it, right? It doesn't really matter what your offer is going to come back as. You can always explain why you're making the offer. So if you can't end up making a full price offer, your offer is still going to probably be higher than a cash offer. So this particular deal, hey, guess what? I can offer you 290. No one's going to offer you 290 because you're not even going to get appraised at 290. No cash buyer or no homestead buyer. So I can offer you 290. A homestead buyer might offer you 265 and a cash offer is going to offer you 212. So in all scenarios in this example, we're still the highest as a creative finance offer. Even though you have it listed at 335, we're still paying you more than anybody else would. So there's always a way that you can get around that. So a full price offer is just a hook. That's correct. And we can always go back and explain to them. And I've never had an issue with it, when it comes down to it, because it's like, okay, well, you do have it listed at 335, and all said and done, the house is worth 290. So a full price offer would be 290, right? Even though you have it listed at 335, that's wishful thinking. So, and most people know that and they know it going in. It's just everybody's always trying to get the most, right? That they can get for a property. So that's just kind of a hook. If they're interested, then we're going to go to the very next step. So they say, okay, and I will say this every single time, and I really don't even want you to send me a deal unless A, we know they're interested. Don't send me the deal unless, people will be like, oh, this looks like a good property for creative finance. Have you talked to the seller? Do you even know that they're interested? And they say no. I'm like, that's the first thing you got to do. You got to call the agent or the seller and you have to find out if they're even interested in creative finance. Because what's going to happen is you can make that call and they say no and it's over. Now, it doesn't mean you can't follow up with that person over time. The longer a house sits on the market, the more creative people want to get rid of their properties. But this is lead generation, even in creative finance, is a numbers game. If you're only talking to one or two people at a time and you're diving into every single deal, you're wasting a lot of time. You need to call as many people as you possibly can and generate as much interest as you possibly can. And some of these deals might even end up being cash deals. Okay. So, A, are we interested? Okay, yes, we're interested. We would like to hear more. The very next thing that you would need to do is find out, okay, is there a mortgage on the property or is it free and clear, fully paid off? If there is a mortgage on the property, we are going to need to see the mortgage statement. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to see the mortgage statement right then. You can say, do you know how much the mortgage payment is? Because this is going to help give an idea of, okay, this property is in this area that gets $2,000 a month for rent for a 1,500 square feet, and the mortgage payment's $4,000 a month. We haven't even seen a mortgage statement. I don't even need to see a mortgage statement. I already know the mortgage payment's $4,000 a month and rents are 2,000. Like this is a completely dead deal as far as creative finance goes. Now we're going to have to talk about a cash offer. Does that make sense? Or, helping them find a solution. And that is not also if you're going to sit here and think that, oh, well, maybe a homestead buyer wants to buy that. No, they don't. No, they don't. So that would not be a good, we talked about last week, wraps. A wrap would be where you find a homestead buyer to come in and sometimes they pay the higher payments, but they're not going to pay a payment that's that high, right? Or the interest rate is super high. So you want to find out if there's a mortgage on it and like, okay, about how much are you paying on the mortgage? I had somebody ask me once, they were like, "Well, what about the mortgage?" I said, "Well, we would be making those mortgage payments, but I need to know how much they are." So, is it free and clear or is there a mortgage payment on it? If there's a mortgage payment, we need to know and at some point, so you're going to probably have to create a little bit of rapport before someone's going to send you a mortgage statement, which I don't really know why, but people don't like to send out their personal information and they definitely always offer with the mortgage statement, they can redact it. They can redact whatever information. They can redact loan number. They can redact address, even though we probably know the address, but if it's going somewhere else, they can redact their names. They can redact. All we really need to verify is how much they're paying, how much is left on the mortgage, what the interest rate is, right? And how many years are left. So, you're probably gonna have to create some rapport. So before are asking for the mortgage statement, unless they're ready and willing to give it to you, you just want to get an idea of how much they're paying. Now, an agent might not know that. They might need to go ask their seller. And at that point, you're gonna kind of this could be multiple conversations. Now, I have negotiated whole entire deals with agents not realizing they haven't even spoken to the seller. Like 2 weeks of negotiating with an agent, thinking I'm negotiating with the seller, and I wasn't. Okay, so everybody is going to make that mistake in the beginning. So I definitely, it's don't do too much negotiating with the agent because the agent isn't the seller. And these agents will negotiate these big deals and then they go present it to the seller and the seller doesn't even want it. So you just kind of you take it slowly and you make sure that, you're giving the agent everything they need to also go to their seller and present the idea. But they're not even presenting the offer yet. They have to get their seller interested because their seller could put the kibosh on it right away. And you just spent 2 weeks, like I did, negotiating this whole big deal, thinking like, oh, okay, they accepted my deal. They accepted my offer. I'm going to write up a contract. And then they come back to me and I spent hours underwriting and hours negotiating this deal, and they never even told their seller, and I didn't even know. And you won't either. So you need to give the agent enough ammunition to be able to go and offer the concept to their seller. Like, hey, we have somebody that's offering you full price, but they want to know if you can take it in payments. Your mortgage would be paid every month. It's an investor, whatever they need to do to go back. And then they come back and they say, okay, my seller's interested. We need to talk about the next steps, right? So, if the agent thinks that the seller is going to be interested and they want to make an offer now, an agent really legally, can't be the one that's just an absolute like hard no. Now, if they say like, okay, well, we've already talked to somebody and, they offer to create a finance and my seller said absolutely not. You can dig into that a little bit with the agent and be like, oh, okay, well, why not? What was going on? Because sometimes it's because whoever made the offer was sketchy and didn't put all the protective devices in play for the seller to make them feel safe and okay doing a transaction like this. Because it's risky for the seller. So you have to put the safeguards in place for the seller, and they need to fully understand that. And most people, they say no, why? They say no because they don't understand. They don't understand what's going on. They don't understand the concept. And so they just say no. So you can talk to the agent then, okay, well, why did they say no? Well, what was the deal? And sometimes it is just a hard no because, this seller, for instance, I'll give you an example, VA loans. VA loans are great for sub two. There's no problem with VA loans. There are some additional due diligence that you have to do in some states. For instance, title companies sometimes don't close them because they'll lose their VA ability to close VA loans. But for the most part, they're great for sub twos. However, there's something called VA entitlements. These are veteran entitlements, which means every single veteran gets a certain amount of money get a loan on a home. So, and it's different everywhere. And it's different for different ranks. Like a high up officer that's living in San Diego, that's in the Navy, they might get $1 million of entitlements. So what that means is they can go buy a $300,000 home. Not that you'd find that in San Diego, but just using it as an example. So then they have $700,000 of entitlements left, which means they can go get $700,000 more VA loans. So they could buy a second home in Washington. They could buy a second home in New Jersey, all the way up to $1 million. Now, most people, regular VA, for instance, here in Jacksonville, Florida, we're a huge Navy town, so I know a lot about this. Um, they might get $350,000 VA entitlements and they buy a $350,000 house. Well, now they just got transferred to Virginia Beach and they need to go buy another house, but they only have $350,000 of entitlements. So if they do a sub two, their entitlements stay in that sub two house. They can't go get another VA loan. They need to be able to sell that house so that they can use their entitlements to go get another VA loan. And in that situation, it wouldn't work because they need their entitlements. Does that make sense to everybody? So there are going to be scenarios like that where that you just get completely shut down because of that. So you kind of want to be aware of like the VA loans and the entitlements and all that because you're going to come across it. Okay, so that being said, you need to get the agent to then, introduce the idea to the seller. And then once the seller is interested, that's when we take the next step, which is let's go ahead and get that mortgage statement. Okay, you have a mortgage on the property. And for the most part, you are going to have mortgages on the property. Here and there, you run across, like I have a deal right now that I'm looking into in Orlando. It's $1 million house near Disney it's 100% owned by the seller. So we're working on a seller finance deal. I don't get those a whole heck of a lot. Most of the time, we're dealing with the mortgage. So we need to see a mortgage statement before we can even make an offer. So here's what you're going to need from the seller. Number one, you're going to need a mortgage statement. Number two, you're going to need to know how much the seller wants or needs in their pocket to make this sale happen. I always ask that because if someone needs $100,000 because they have to go pay this other loan and the house is only worth 200, well, that's not really going to happen in a sub two. We might look at Morby method for that or what I call stack method. And I can talk about that some other time, but that's basically where you go out and you get a DSC, an investor loan in first position, and then the seller's in second position for a smaller amount, right? But this would not be a sub two. That's a stack method. So if they need or want this huge down payment, okay, then it's not going to work. You have to think anywhere from 3 to 10%. And when I'm offering these, there's got to be room for negotiation. So, and this is 3 to 10% all in, including renovations. And I'm going to go over some of what the entry fee is in just a second. But 3 to 10% all in, including any updates or renovations or anything that needs to be done. And so when I am initially talking to people, we start because there's got to be room for a negotiation. We start at like we usually put about 3 to 4% down, 3 to 4% on a $100,000 house. That's $3,000 down. On a $200,000 house, that's $6,000 down. See you, Wanye. I saw you forwarded my email over there, so we'll wait to hear back. We put in an offer on a creative finance deal earlier today. So, okay, so we start at 3 to 5%. We need to know what the seller needs the money for. Now, if you have got a situation where there's at least $30,000 in equity, that's okay. As long as we don't have to give them that cash up front. We can still give them the $6,000 and the other $24,000, and this is where we'd go into what we call a hybrid, would be made to the seller in payments. That's what I did on the deal that I sent out the letter of intent today with Wanye. She really wants $20,000 in cash. It's too much because the agent still has to be paid. This is why I say 3 to 4%, because there's closing costs, there's agent fees, there's, all that kind of stuff. And I'll go over some of the entry fee again in just a second. But this at least gives the seller an idea. I mean, if it's a hard no on the 3 to 5%, you do have a little bit of room for negotiation. And depending on cash flow, you can give them a little bit more. But we need to set a realistic expectation and have some room to be able to negotiate to go up or down with the seller as per their needs. So we always need to know what they need the money for. I had a deal that I was working on with a lady, and Her husband, her and her husband were separated, but he died, and then she got the house, and it wasn't going to work out selling it cash. She would have had to come to the table with money. She did not have money. And what she really wanted was to get this RV that she could park at an RV resort. So she wanted to buy the RV. The RV was like $10,000. And then she wanted like, 6 months of rent at the RV park. So I think it came out to like 13,500. That's very specific. People usually have something very specific in mind. You need to know what that is. Don't ever worry about asking questions that are, oh, that's too invasive. It's not. We need to know it all because we need to be able to find a solution to the issue, right? We're trying to find a solution for them, but also make it a good deal for us. You don't want to be desperate and just take deals. And then you go to try to sell them and nobody wants to buy them. So you got the seller under contract and nobody wants to buy the deal. So you need to know what that seller needs their money for. So, how much money that you need up front. Usually with a sub two, you don't have to worry about monthly payments. If there's a hybrid, I don't ask about monthly payments. I give them the monthly payment that I can give them based off of what my cash flow is going to be. So if there's a hybrid deal and we're paying back $15,000 over 10 years and I say $100 a month and they come back to me and want 500, I might say 100's the most I can do because otherwise I'm not going to cash flow if I have to give you 500, right? So I don't always ask, but in a seller finance deal, you are going to have to ask how much they need on a monthly basis, how much they need slash want. For instance, the Orlando deal that I'm working on, the guy has been getting $5,900 a month in rent. Now, if we do a seller finance deal, he is no longer paying taxes and insurance. So I take into consideration that I'm not going to rent this property. I'm probably going to Airbnb this property, or the buyer is if I don't buy it. So we're going to be getting significantly more cash on a monthly basis than the rent. But for me to at least break even on the rents, I'm going to subtract, in taxes and insurance. So now maybe instead of him getting 5,900, he's no longer paying taxes and insurance. He might be getting $3,500 a month. So it's very similar to what he's getting as a rental, right? It's very similar to what he's getting as a rental. Hey, Mama's on a call, but she said hi. Oh, say hi, but then you gotta go. Hi. Hi. Yeah. Okay, go play. Go play with Miss Barb. I'll be done in a little bit, okay? I'm done in just a little bit. Hey, Mark. Okay. Where'd he go? Hold on, guys, just a second. Okay. So these are all the things thanks, guys. He is so cute. So these are all the things that you don't have to know intricately. I can help you with this, or someone that you connect with that's helping you with creative finance, right? Bring them to me. I'll help you all day long. I might not be the buyer, but I can help you structure it. But these are all the things that I can think of. But before you bring it to me, this is good practice for you too. To remember, like, this is the information that you need, right? Mortgage statement, how much do they want to see up front, and how much do they want as monthly payments if it's a seller finance. Once we have that information, then we can do the next step, which is just a little bit of underwriting. Does this deal even make sense? Does it make sense to do? Right. So again, I have not, I mean, and once you get proficient at this can all happen in like a nanosecond, right? Like it happens quickly. But I'm just kind of explaining it so slowly as like a step by step on how we can make these offers. So Lakitha, I don't use a calculator. I don't think you need to use a calculator. The only time that you're going to need to use a calculator is it when you're ready to take it to the next step and be the buyer or go under contract. And here's why. Okay, so I'm going to pull this up on Zillow. Let me pull Zillow up. I am going to use this as an example. All right, here's my Zillow. Okay, so let's say this is an actual property. Peter Pan. Okay, so here we go. All right, so this property right here, you guys see this 6889 Peter Pan Place. So this was an actual sub two that I bought not too long ago, a couple years ago. And essentially she came to me. I got to her through a referral. Somebody brought her to me. She had a whole issue going on here. So you see the house is really, really nice. It doesn't even need any renovation or anything like that. It was newly renovated. But anyway, she needed to get back to Miami. Long story short, I have gone over this deal before and in like a super deep dive. I turned this into a co-living property. So right now we have six tenants that live there. But she bought this property, I want to say, for 275. She bought the pop and she had only owned it for a year. Boyfriend walked out on her. She told me that she has a $1,700 a month mortgage. $1,700 a month mortgage. She's got about 255 left on the loan, I want to say. I don't know, this is a couple years ago. I'm just doing high level. So if I say, okay, $1,700, the minimum that you want is to be able to cash flow as a rental. So I would go in here and say for rent. And I like to make sure that we're not within the 12, 6 months, maybe 90 days would be better. See, there's a lot for rent over here too. So let's go in here and I can just get like a quick $1,700 a month. Does that work? So $1,700, a 5 bedroom, 2 bathroom, that's 2,000 square feet. That's 1,700. See, a 4 to 1,500, that's the same as ours. Um, and this is just a gut check of what people have their houses up for rent. And this one isn't even as nicely renovated. Now it's not rented, it's up on the market. So will they get that or not? I don't know. But this you can kind of see, right? Like I don't need to go in and do a full deep dive underwriting on rentals. I can just look around and see what basic rent rates are. So we're at 1,500 to $1,800 a month in this area, right? So Peter Pan Place, you see it's right here. There's nothing for rent over here. Here's one that's 2,000. Let's see what this one is. Yeah, 2,000 square feet. So I can just look and see even over here, like I can move it over here and say, okay, the lowest is 1,200. Okay, that's a townhouse. Mine's bigger than a townhouse. So all I'm doing is looking around at the listings and seeing what the listings are up for because it's going to be very close to what the rent rates are. So I know she's got a $1,700 a month payment, and we're at $1,500 to $1,800 a month in rents. So this is a viable deal, right? And I haven't even gotten into any underwriting yet. You guys don't have to have an intricate calculator. I do have a calculator for when I'm ready to buy a deal. I do have a calculator. But what I use I buy co-living. And so I have a co-living calculator. I absolutely can show it to you. And so I plug in all my numbers there. But what I want to know is if all else fails, can I rent this property and break even, right? So at $1,500 to $1,800 a month in rent, I'm feeling pretty comfortable with moving forward with some more underwriting with her, especially because I know that I'm probably going to be able to get double that as a co-living. So I want a lot of people when they're looking at sub twos, when I put my buy box out there, I say to people, I want to at least break even as a rental because I know that if the city comes in and shuts me down or it doesn't end up working out as a pats or as a co-living or whatever, that I can at least take this property and rent it. Because if I'm going to buy it at 255 and ARV is 275, I'm probably not going to be able to sell it. I'm going to have to hold on to it for a little bit at least. So you just want to know that it's some your mortgage payment is somewhere around rent rates. Now, if she told me my mortgage payment is $2,400 a month, I know right away that the interest rate's really high and that it's probably not going to work. Now, I would still look at a mortgage statement. I'd be like, okay, let me see what I can do. Let me look at a mortgage statement and just kind of like dive into like, are there other exit strategies? That's what we call, how you're going to make money on this property. Could this property be an Airbnb? Is it close to, Disney? Is it close to the beach? Could it be a vacation rental? Could it be a co-living? Could it be a wrap? Now, $2,400 a month, if she said that, it'd be pretty high for this area, so I wouldn't think. But if she said 2,200, well, this could actually be a good scenario for a homestead buyer. If it's a low entry fee and somebody's looking for a house to own, they pay a little bit more in their mortgage, right? But maybe they can't qualify for a regular mortgage because they're independent contractor or they get paid mostly cash because they're a landscaping company or whatever, right? So there's homestead buyers that are looking for properties that sometimes they'll pay higher than rent rates. So these are just again, some high level ideas that when you're talking to people, just have this in mind. You're going to start to really learn this and get to know this as you walk through some of your first deals, but you just need to be dangerous enough to say, oh, this is a viable deal, and then take it to somebody that is an expert and can help you get through the next steps. Does that make sense? So this is a viable deal, and I'd say, okay, I need to see a mortgage statement, need to figure out how much does she need. So in this particular case, she wanted $3,000 to be able to go and put a down payment and rent a condo in Miami. Perfect. Right? I'm like, okay, that's great. So now we're going to dive into this. I'm going to go underwrite it as a co-living because that's my exit strategy. Now, you don't know what a buyer's exit strategy is going to be. All you really want to know is, does this cash flow as a rental or does it not? If it doesn't cash flow as a rental, are there other exit strategies? In this particular area, this is not an Airbnb area, but it is a great co-living area. Okay, great. This could potentially be a good co-living. We're over 1,500 square feet. It's already renovated. You might not have to put a lot of cash in it to convert it. Let me go find, oh, I know April Juliana, she's a co-living buyer. Or I know Mandy Konecki, she's a co-living buyer. Let me go take this to Mandy. She might be interested in buying it. And then you let them do their calculations and their underwriting. I mean, this is pretty simple, right? Find out what the rents are. I mean, that's all I did on Zillow is I went in the last 90 days, the listed in the last 90 days for rent in the area, and I got a basic idea of what it is. And then you go find somebody to help. Now, as you start getting better at this and you start getting more of these deals, and this is something that you're really going to focus on and offer to buyers, yeah, sure. Maybe you want to dive into a little bit more and offer a better service to your buyers. But right now, you're just looking for your first couple of creative finance deals. And this is all you need to do is you need to know the basic rent rates, how much the mortgage payment is. Okay, now that I know, let me get a mortgage statement and verify. Okay, great. How much money do you need to walk away from this deal? $3,000. Awesome. All right, let's call April and see if we can't get a deal put together, an offer put together. Um, does that seem pretty easy? Breaking it down that way? Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, so somebody did ask, where can you get proof of funds for working a creative finance deal? I would say I have never ever given proof of funds on a creative finance deal. If you are asking me because you do have someone asking you for proof of funds on a creative finance deal, just call me up and I will get you proof of funds for your creative to do a creative finance deal. Um, Most of the time when you're doing a creative finance deal, people want to know who you are if they're going to do the deal with you because there's some, legalities that are in place, um, that they're taking a risk, right? And so for instance, every single creative finance deal that I own, like I just talked to the seller of one that I bought 3 years ago today. You're in a relationship with that seller because you're paying their mortgage. And that's why at one point, it's good when you're talking to agents, you need to get the agent out of the way and you need to create a relationship with the seller. There's even deals that I've sub-2'd. So I had someone reach out to me. I'm sorry, the deals that I've assigned sub-2. So I assigned this sub-2 deal. Gosh, it had to have been 4 years ago. And the buyer just emailed me 2 days ago to help him with something with the seller. So I even created the rapport with the seller and the buyer. And sometimes they still reach out to me and I, broker whatever needs to be done. In this case, it was the insurance company accidentally sent the insurance proceeds to the seller and not to the new buyer. And so we had to figure out how to get that check endorsed back to the buyer. And so there's going to be like you're going to have a relationship. So really what the seller wants to know, what everybody wants to know when they're asking for proof of funds is who are you and why should I trust you? And so when it comes to a creative finance deal, most people do not ask for proof of funds. They ask who you are and who your company is and why they should do business with you. And you need to make them feel safe. And we did talk about this a little bit last week, all the different safeguards that you can put in place. But essentially, what they need to know is that if you don't make the payments, you get the property back with all the improvements and equity and payments that we've already made to you. And so, they most of the time it's a wholesaler. The wholesaler wants proof of funds. I gotcha. Um, what do they want to see like cash in your bank account to show that you can do the down payment? Um, if that's the case, I can email you something. I can email you proof of funds. Are you buying it? Or were you trying to connect it with the buyer? Because if you're buying it, well, then you should have the funds. If you're not the one buying it and you're connecting it with the buyer, so let's say that you're bringing it to me, then you'll get my proof of funds. So if he's asking you for proof of funds, um, listen, like I work for the buyer, April Giuliano in Jacksonville, Florida. She buys, all over the country. And, here's her email. Can you just CC me, send her the deal, CC me? I'm looking for deals for her and then she'll know, right? So, if he like won't even send you the details of the deal without proof of funds, then fuck that guy. Like, just move on. He's an idiot. That's stupid. You're never gonna find a buyer. So, um, okay, great. If you have the details, then you can send it to me. And then you just want your end buyer to send the proof of funds. So you don't even have to worry about it. Just get your end buyer to send proof of funds. Where you're going to find issues with proof of funds are cash deals. And then you can use websites that do transactional lending. I used to use besttransactionalfunds.com. And they essentially will send you a proof of funds letter because they do transactional funding. Transactional funding is when you borrow the money for like 2 days and then you go in to get a loan. So that's what I use for proof of funds. Otherwise, for these deals, I would just use an end buyer. Okay, so then from there, you would want to work with your end buyer and talk about, what sort of offer to give the seller. Now, the first thing that I do, because, when you're working with an agent, here's what agents are used to. Agents are used to sometimes you don't even talk to to the other agent or to the buyer. They just send a contract, right? You send a contract. I'm the seller. I look at the contract, I counter, I say yes or no, whatever, right? So an agent's really going to kind of want something in writing. So what we do is we send a letter, like a sample letter of intent. Let me pull one up. And I definitely have posted this inside my school before, and I can go and I can I used it today. Hold on. I don't know where it is. I just had it. Yeah, here it is. Okay, let me just do this real quick. I'm just redacting information on this. Okay. So here is what I'll usually send to the agent because I'm not going to fill out a whole entire sub two contract because those things are just like long and it's a waste of my time. But this is not a waste of my time. So I know how much the payment is because I looked at the mortgage statement. I know how much the seller needs in cash. And I've already kind of looked to see so I have not done a deep dive into this at all yet, right? Because this is still a letter of intent. When they go to say they want to purchase, I might do a little bit more of a deep dive, but I don't use like all these big calculators. The people that use like all the big calculators are the people that are actually buying the deal. And I can show you what a couple of my calculators look like. Um, but so this is what I said, right? So I said, this is my company. This is the address. I don't know the owner's name yet. So I just say owner on deed. This is a sub two. And it actually is a hybrid. I messed that up because I had changed this, but this is a hybrid and I'll show you why. My purchase price was 250, cash to seller is 10,000, and then seller carryback. That's what the seller is going to finance. So they'll actually have a mortgage on the property for $10,000. I said principal only. I'm going to make them a $100 payment a month for 5 years, which means that at the end of that 5 years, then I'm going to pay out a balloon, right? So I can't remember what so it's basically 1,200 times five. Actually, that goes to 6,000. So at the end of 5 years, I would owe them a $4,000 payment. Now, you don't want to go more than that because they could actually, if at the end of 5 years you owed someone $50,000 and you weren't able to come up with that $50,000, then the seller could take the property back after you've already put in all that money, right? So you have to be really careful with that. And again, I'm not going into a deep dive. We only have a couple more minutes here. Current mortgage payment, 1987. EMD. So this is what the LOI looks like, right? I don't even really sign it. I just put my name on it. This is just something in writing, something that they like that he can now take it back to a seller because I know that he hasn't talked to a seller about it yet. So I don't want to send a contract. I don't want to get all involved. I don't even know if the seller is interested. I don't even usually like to do that until I know the seller is interested, but I know sometimes people they don't quite understand the whole concept of creative finance and looking at something in writing really helps. So you can do that yourself. You can have your assistant do it, whatever, but um, sending something that they can take a look at. Um, okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about, and I said that I would, go over this real quick, are what the entry fee looks like, which is why I say the 3 to 5% when we're talking to sellers. I think people forget about what all goes into the entry fee for a buyer. So number one, the entry fee is going to be cash to seller. How much are we giving the seller? Number two is going to be closing costs, and that's going to be different in every single state. They're really high in Florida, really high. So, like in most states, I think it's 1%. In Florida, it's 2 to 2.5%. The wholesaler or agent fee. If you're dealing with an agent, you're going to pay the agent fees. Now, the seller is supposed to pay the agent fee. However, when you're dealing with creative finance, it's kind of all the same. So you kind of get the idea of if the seller's like dead set that they're paying the agent fee, well, then you make the cash to seller higher. Or you can be like, hey, guess what? I'll pay the agent fee, right? And here's what I'll give you in cash. So it's the same thing. They just don't know that. So let's say that you're offering the seller cash $10,000 and you're giving the agent four. You can either say, I'll pay the agent and give you 10, or you can say, okay, seller pays the agent, I'll give you 14. It's both the same, but you're offering it a little bit different depending on the seller and where their head's at and where the agent's head's at, right? So it's kind of it all ends up kind of being the same thing. So wholesaler has an assignment fee that's got to be in there. And if you're assigning it, you have to take that into consideration. If somebody has a $200,000 deal and they want $20,000 and you want a $10,000 assignment fee, well, that's not really going to work. Now you're looking at 20% instead of 10%. You're looking at 15% instead of 10%. So you need to get that seller down from their 20,000 to 10,000 so you can take a $10,000 assignment fee if that's possible. You're not always going to make huge $50,000 assignment fees on these types of deals. Sometimes you do, but most of the time it's going to be anywhere from 10 to 20,000 on an assignment fee. So you have to take that into consideration. Repairs, if there needs to be any repairs to the house. Now, if it's a house that's rent ready and it looks good, it's just not completely updated, then your purchase price is probably going to be a little bit lower. Um, but you always, I know a lot of people say like no equity sub two deals. You don't really want those. You want to have a little bit of equity. You want to have at least 10% equity. If there's some people out there that will go over, and that's totally fine. It really just depends on like how good of a deal it is and where the cash flow is, but you want to think at least 10% equity. So if you want to look at like fully renovated houses, like I just said on this last deal are selling for 290. This is not fully renovated. It's nice. It's very nice, but it needs a 2026 update. And they've got it for 335. So whereas I'd be willing to give you 290, that's still not a whole heck of a lot of equity. But you have to think like, okay, maybe this needs renovation, maybe it doesn't, but you have to people have sent me deals where there's a 10% entry fee, but the house needs a $90,000 renovation. That just does not work. Okay, so you have your closing costs, your cash to seller, your wholesaler agent fee, the renovation costs. So those are all the things that you have to take into consideration with the 10% entry fee, which is why you always start a little bit lower. How do you figure out what closing costs are? So yeah, it really depends on what state you're in. For the most part, you could just say it's 1%. If you're in Florida, you'd say it's 2%. So if the purchase price is 300,000, then you just want to think $3,000 for closing costs. That might be a little high in some states even. Um, Mark, you said best would be one that has more than 15 years on the loan left. You're saying that's a better one. So, honestly, I feel like um it really just depends on the buyer, but obviously like if it's a 30-year loan and there's 28 years left, you're getting into a loan where you're paying mostly interest. Um, yeah, I think that really it depends on the cash flow, but most people that are buying sub two deals want 5% is like the absolute highest that people want to go. Most people looking for sub two deals are going to want to be under. Now, if there's some sweet deal that's got a lot of equity, but it's got a 7% interest rate, but it's still going to cash flow $1,000 as a rental, I mean, that'd be like a unicorn deal. But, I wouldn't turn that down because it has a 7%, especially if there's equity in it and some of the loan's been paid down. So really, that's why you need that mortgage statement. Ian, is Zillow a good place to find the deals? Yeah, absolutely. Just stalk Zillow. In the long run, this is a numbers game. You need to create systems that are going to allow you to like blast through all of these. So I think Zillow is more of a slow play, but it's a good learning tool. And it's a good way, like you can call people, especially if you're looking for something specific. Um, it's a good way to learn and to find deals. I wouldn't say that that's going to make you a shit ton of money, but it is a good place to start. You just won't stay there. Okay, I can take probably like one or two questions if anybody has any. I'd be more than happy. Justin, great. Come on, Justin, what you got?
Okay, so my question is, after the entry fee, so that's when you pay for if it's a hybrid deal, you pay for their mortgage and the seller care, right? The seller care is how much equity you're paying to the seller, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so okay, so let's say, good question. Let's say there's $50,000 in equity. It's a
Mhm.
$200,000 house. So 10% is 20,000. Really, ideally, you'd want to pay them 10, but they still have $40,000 in equity. Well, that's when you would say, okay, we're going to give you the 50. You're going to get 10 up front at closing to walk away with and put in your pocket. And the other 40 is going to come to you every single month at whatever, $100 a
Mhm.
month for the next 10 years. And at the end of year 10, you're going to get paid out whatever we haven't paid you to equal that $50,000.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, good question.
Okay. And
Anybody
then,
else?
oh yeah, one
Yeah,
more.
go ahead. Go ahead.
So
Great.
you want to keep the entry fee in between 3 to 5%, so that way you can assign it to an end buyer or
Yes, and then there's an assignment fee for you. Good, good.
oh
So
okay.
yeah, so like even in that scenario, um, you got, let's say there's 50,000 in equity. It's a $200,000 house, 10% would be 20,000. So if you gave the seller 10,000, there's still room in there for you to say, I'll take a $5,000 assignment fee, and then there's $3,000 in closing costs. That's your 20%, that's 10%. So really you want to give the seller anywhere from 3 to 5% so that you can leave room for assignment fee, closing
Mhm.
costs, renovation, like whatever needs to be done, and really, have that all in there. Now remember, your assignment fee also goes towards the purchase price
Mm, okay.
because that's what someone's going to be paying you in total. So let's say that, ARV is 300 and, you're right at 300 and then you say, "Oh, and I want a $20,000 assignment fee." Well, now that buyer's paying 320, so you actually would need to get that purchase price down to 280, and then you put your $20,000 assignment fee. Now you're at a purchase price of, so everything all together is the purchase price, even the closing costs.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Good questions. All right, guys. Well, it is 4:36, so I usually try to end these right on time. I gotta go. You saw my kiddos; they're all ready to say hi to me, so I'm gonna go and hang out with my kids, and we will be here again next week, diving into more of this stuff. I really appreciate all you guys coming, and listen, I'm available. If you can see, my phone number is at the bottom of my screen. You can follow me on Instagram. It's at April N. Giuliano. I post a lot of information there, free information there. You can follow me at school. You can find me anywhere. Bring me deals. I'd love to work on deals with you. I can help you structure them, put them together, talk to your sellers, whatever it is that you guys need, I can help. Um, all right. I will talk to you later. Thank you so
Right.
much.
Thank you, April.
Thanks, Jerry.